Welcome to Astronomy on Tap, October 2020 edition. Woo-hoo-hoo. I am the Cosmic Kid along with my co-host MC. How are y'all feeling tonight? Woo. How you doing, MC?
I'm doing great.
Welcome to Astronomy on Tap, October 2020 edition. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Sorry, there is an echo. I'm sorry about that. It's all fixed now. I'm doing great. I've got a Guinness here that I'm drinking. What are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking a lovely Chardonnay.
Excellent.
And MC, there's a big life update for you, isn't there?
There is. I very recently, just over a week ago, got married.
Congratulations!
Hooray! Thank you.
Celebrates all of life's accomplishments. Let's go. Let's get a round of applause in the chat, please.
Hooray! Yay me!
All right, we've got a packed show for you tonight. MC, I think you've got some slides for us.
I'm going to start sharing my screen here. And there we go. So to start, we're still doing trivia. You can check it out at text.ag/AOT trivia. Please fill it out. Take your best guesses. Winners will be emailed. You will still be able to get prizes. Even though we're not in person, you can still get a prize. So please do the trivia, check it out. And yeah, the link's also in the description if you don't remember this link.
Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on all that's going on. And if you miss any of our shows, they're all available on YouTube to watch whenever you want to watch. Beauty of live streaming online, it's always available online.
Also, make sure to check us out on social media. So we're on Twitter at AoT_BCS and on Facebook and Instagram at AoT BCS. We'll post pretty frequent updates there about what's going on. And you can also find our events on astronomyontap.org/events.
Try to help support the Grand Stafford, which is where we used to host back when we were in person. You can Venmo Jose Quintana 20 to make sure that the Grand Stafford can stay in operation so that when this is all over, we can go back to hanging out together.
You can also donate to us directly online at AoT BCS on Venmo or Cash App. If you donate $15, you get an amazing AoT t-shirt, just like the one I'm wearing, same as the one the Cosmic Kid is wearing.
And our next event is going to be November 18th of 2020. That is going to be the third Wednesday of November. So make sure to check us out then.
And please, as we're going, put your questions in the live chat. Don't wait until the talks are over. Just drop them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the talks. But don't wait till the end of the talks to ask your questions. You might forget what you want to ask. And that's it for our announcements.
Excellent. So first up, let's go ahead and slide on right into our first talk with the Dark Matter Dude. Come on up, Dark Matter Dude. Hey, so fact about Dark Matter Dude, he loves Christmas decorations. Let me ask you, when is the appropriate time to start putting up Christmas decorations? Obviously, you got to wait till after Halloween, but how long do you wait before you start putting them up?
So I say you put them up immediately after Halloween. And my partner Jessica really likes Halloween, and we've talked about just splitting the year in half. So 6 months, starting 6 months away from Halloween, we decorate for Halloween, and then the day after Halloween we start decorating for Christmas, and then keep that up long after Christmas ends. Yep, that's our bright idea.
Great plan. And one more question for you: what are you drinking tonight?
What am I drinking tonight? I have just started a truly hard lemonade. It's the strawberry flavor. And yeah, that's what I got.
Truly a great choice. All right, well, take it away, Dark Matter Dude, with what's going on with the hole in the satellite picture.
Yeah, okay. So, right, the hole in the satellite picture, it is one of my favorite lyrics from Smash Mouth's All-Star, which is one of the best songs that the humanity has made. And so I was kind of inspired by this. And so I'm going to kind of give a talk about a particular satellite picture and some of the holes that might be here. And hopefully that joke will make sense in a little bit. So what is happening? So what I'm talking about here are satellite constellations. And so constellations, when you have a satellite constellation, you can have any number of satellites. Typically, they look the same, they have the same functionality, and they're all orbiting in a way that basically gives you some kind of contiguous coverage. So we do this already a lot. We do this for navigation. So the GPS satellite system is a system. We also do this for satellite telephone. Iridium is an example of this. That's where the GIF on the left is from. And also we do some Earth observing with this. So taking pictures of the ground from the sky. Now, the new thing, and where we're sort of starting off with this, is that recently companies have started launching new systems. Primarily this has been making news because of SpaceX's Starlink satellite constellation. So this constellation is supposed to have up to 42, they're approved for up to 42,000 satellites. And the goal, the stated goal is to kind of blanket the globe with a continuous high-speed internet coverage, basically. So wherever you are on Earth, you can tap into, I don't know, SpaceX's or Starlink's Wi-Fi signal, given the right equipment. So Starlink isn't the only company that's doing this. If you just kind of look at all the companies that have confirmed projects so far, it's really a who's who of your big tech companies. So that's, its own thing. So you have Samsung, Amazon, Boeing, Google. They're all in the mix. And we already have a lot of stuff in low Earth orbit where all these systems are. So the big question is like, okay, we already have stuff there. What's a little bit more? And I kind of want to push back on that idea a little bit. Actually, this is a pretty drastic change in the landscape. And so this is a plot that's basically objects that are larger than 100 kilograms. So pretty massive things in low Earth orbit over time. And the big spike towards the 2018, 2017 era and since then is mainly due to SpaceX's Starlink. And this is so Starlink in and of itself has doubled the amount of stuff at this mass that's in low Earth orbit. And this is only with a few hundred satellites, keeping in mind they want to launch tens of thousands. So what's the worry? Like on the basis, I just said maybe some scary things, but mainly it's just big numbers, and you're not super concerned. You may not be super concerned what's going on, and not to worry. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, has said, "We are confident that we will not cause any effect whatsoever in astronomical discoveries. Zero. That's my prediction. We'll take corrective action if the impact is above zero." So because Elon Musk says everything is fine, everything is fine. Just kidding. So the idea here, and why the baseline reason why Starlink is a problem, is that to minimize solar heating effects. So basically the sun is pretty constantly hitting these satellites. They might heat up. That'll deal with the electronics. Your Wi-Fi signal might not be as strong. So to minimize those effects, the surfaces of these satellites are coated in a pretty reflective material. That's to keep not enough sun like hitting the stuff that you don't want sun to hit. And on top of that, you have a really big, large solar panel that'll come in later. So that's what the Starlink satellites look like. And so near in the hours right after sunset and before sunrise, basically these things are like giant disco balls in space, is the result. So when you're doing astronomy, taking pictures of the night sky, sometimes you do that during twilight hours, you get stuff that looks like this. So these are two instances of very high class astronomical observations being like these single 30-second exposures being wrecked by these satellite streaks, and that's the result. This is literally just a bright thing traveling across over the span of those 30 seconds. Depending on their altitude and brightness, this may not just be a concern for astronomers. It could also spoil normal starry nights for things like amateur astronomy, astrophotography, and just like general nature enthusiasm. This picture, if you remember, I forget times a flat circle. Like a few months ago, there was that comet Neowise. Some amateur astronomers wanted to basically just take a picture, like a normal astrophotography with your Canon digital camera, try to take a picture of comet Neowise, and here we have Starlink streaks on top of that. So that's the gist. Like the idea is these things are basically disco balls in space, and that's affecting astronomy, just like us taking images. Now, specifically, how will this impact some science? It kind of depends on lots of things going to how big of a problem is this. There are things about the satellite. So an individual satellite, depending on its size, shape, height from Earth, and its orbital trajectory, all that changes how much sun is being reflected and where people see it the most. Meanwhile, time of year and the time of night and location on Earth determine how much of that sunlight that gets reflected is actually reflected like at Earth. So all these things, it can get pretty complicated once you start going with it. But the gist is all of these things kind of play a role in making this a problem. So what kind of science are kind of being blocked or mitigated from this? So if you want to scan large portions of the sky looking for faint transient objects, this is looking for stuff that's out past Neptune, possibly including the mysterious planet 9. This is bad for you because you might miss out on a lot of those transients. Also, scientists looking for asteroids orbiting near Earth often look for those objects near the sun. The idea being just after sunset, they're kind of the asteroids are kind of towards the sun, so they're reflecting a lot of light, but it's still hitting Earth in a spot that might be too bright to see during the day. So our ability to find and track near Earth asteroids is going to be impacted by Starlink going full online or any of these other companies making their own systems. So like we joke a lot about like Armageddon and how accurate of a like movie it is in terms of astronomy and whatnot. But like if you want to think of astronomers as one of the first lines of defense against a massive asteroid hitting Earth, this isn't helping that. And finally, in a lot of big galaxy surveys that are focused on answering the questions like how much dark energy is there in the universe or what is dark energy, a lot of those measurements depend on really precise instrumentation, and also you need to a lot of it's really sensitive to systematic effects. Basically, the idea is that if you have all these streaks and they vary across time and across the sky, it's hard to include that when you're modeling and trying to pull out what is dark energy. And so those systematic effects of several hundred pixel long streaks, that's a problem, and people are scared about that. So one particular use case that kind of combines lots of those projects and other ones is with LSST. So LSST is a project that is going to turn on shortly. I think it's like 2022, maybe his first flight. And so it's a very sensitive camera and a very large diameter mirror. And basically the idea is to take a picture and kind of scan over the night sky, the entire night sky, over the course of just 3 nights. So it's going to survey the entire southern sky in 3 night chunks. And that's going and it's going to go very deep. And basically it's just going to be the best thing that's happened to astronomy since sliced bread. So a particular case study with LSST. So if you kind of fold in the observing strategy, the nightly cadence, and all the info that SpaceX has been willing to tell astronomers, here's what you kind of get. The end result, if you simulate all those complicated effects, nearly 30% of all LSST images will contain at least one satellite trail. Nearly every image taken at twilight will have at least one satellite trail. And even if you dim the satellites, we'll talk a little bit about dimming them in a second. If you make the satellites dimmer, the trail will still remain. You'll just get rid of some of the worst effects. And with that trail, you could potentially create systematics like the ones we were talking about earlier with dark energy. So it's not good. Like the astronomers are very clear. This is going to impact the ability of LSST to give us the science that we thought it would. Basically because of these satellite constellations. Separately from so all that I talked about up to this point is kind of optical astronomy. So optical wavelengths, the wavelengths that we see. There's also radio astronomy. So this is like the VLA, other of those types of radio dishes. And so basically, one of the other concerns with Starlink is that kind of aggregate radio signals from basically just the satellites communicating with each other with radio, still threatens radio wavelengths. Basically, you have radio signals kind of filtering out from the sides, kind of. And this is a really big threat. We put these radio telescopes in very radio quiet areas so that we can look into the sky and not be, not pick up anything that isn't this astronomical signal. And so lots of these famous results, like the Event Horizon Telescope black hole image of M87 that you may have seen a few months ago, and this lots of stuff having to do with planet formation. So how planets form from dust grains all the way up to these massive bodies. All of that depends on radio, and you really need you really need to have a nice radio quiet signal in order to get these very faint astronomical signals. And so this is also threatening radio as well. Okay, so what can we do? By we, I mostly mean Starlink and astronomers working together. What can we do to kind of mitigate these challenges? So the American Astronomical Society met up with a few other astronomy industry experts, got together, came up with these kind of formal recommendations that they're going to work on with Starlink. And this is the first iteration of these is basically from a report called SatCon1, which I think is great because it's a play on DEF CON. So there's 6 ideas. The first is launch fewer or no satellites. Kind of obvious, but this is really the only way to have 0 astronomical impact like Elon Musk claims that he wants. This obviously isn't likely given how many companies have already invested in their systems and the lucrative market that they foresee. Everybody, different numbers kind of pop in and out, but the idea is you could have like $1 trillion market in giving internet to everybody. And so even if you can get a slice of it, that's a lot of money. If you deploy your satellite constellations further away than 600 kilometers from Earth, that will, or not further away, closer than, if you bring them closer to that, that helps. So basically the idea is that at higher altitudes, the constellations will be visible all the time. If you bring them closer, they're visible for less of the night if you keep everything the same. You can also darken the satellites. So SpaceX has actually done this. They basically painted one of their satellites black, kind of. That coating, worked. It made it fainter. It went from 5 magnitudes to 6 magnitudes, so that's about 55% fainter. But it's still not enough. In order to get to the point where LSST feels confident that they can get rid of the satellite trails with just processing, you need these satellites to be around 7th magnitude. That's the magic number. You can control the orientation of the satellite to reflect less sunlight back at Earth. So part of this comes from the fact that the bulk of the light reflected, once you paint it black, the bulk of the light reflected actually comes from the solar panels, which is fascinating because you can't paint the solar panels black because then they don't work. And so if you basically just like tilt it the right way, you reflect light from the sun away from Earth, and then you're saved from that perspective. You can remove trails with image processing. So this is basically just like the astronomers being really clever with software. And we've talked about how you can do that once they get faint enough, but you're still affecting the science. And then the last kind of option is to make the orbits available so that observers avoid it. Basically, if you know where the satellites are, you can point your telescopes away from that. The radio astronomers are actually going a pretty kind of different route. Instead of working directly with Starlink, they are actually going through the United Nations and trying to get regulation passed on Starlink. One idea is to have all satellites designed to avoid beaming at telescopes and or quiet zones. And then you also control the leakage from the satellites out of their side lobes. So that's just where radio astronomy is. Some misconceptions about this project, just to clarify things. One idea is, future observatories are going to be in space, so ground-based astronomy doesn't matter anymore. That's not true. So astronomers do have a lot of really exciting space telescopes coming up. You have James Webb, Nancy Grace Roman, one of the 4 great observatories that might get picked for the next round of decadal. But there's problems with this idea. Basically, it's really hard to put stuff in space. It's expensive to just do initially. You're size restricted, so you can only make so big of a mirror that will fit on a rocket. And so you're limited from that perspective, and also like the weight of the instruments that you put on as well. And also, if a space telescope breaks, it's very hard to repair it. All of these problems are fixed if you stay on the ground. One of the main reasons to go into space is to access wavelengths that are blocked from the atmosphere. So this is like infrared and ultraviolet. We love the atmosphere because it keeps humans alive, but it's actually kind of annoying if you do certain types of astronomy. And so going to space alleviates that. But then that's complemented with really awesome ground-based observatories. Finally, there's this idea. The main argument in favor of Starlink that I've seen is that it's going to provide affordable internet for everyone. So let's just examine this for a second. Starlink hasn't officially released numbers on how much a subscription will cost, but reasonable estimates say $80 a month, and then some unknown cost for the transmitter that sends the signal. Like, it's kind of like your Wi-Fi router. It's what sends the signal from your phone to the space, to this, the space constellation. So if you take that number, just go with it, and then compare how, for an individual country, how many people in that country already have internet, and then also how affordable is that $80 a month. And so if you look at this plot, basically affordability is on the x-axis and number of people who have the internet's on the y-axis. Starlink really if we're going with the affordable internet for everyone argument, you really want Starlink is useful in the yellow region where it's most needed and it's affordable. And that's not true for all of these countries. So this idea that we're just granting internet access to everybody for that's affordable is just not true. There's also this quote from Alan Bursfield. The service is not intended for people we're told it will save, assuming that internet access will solve basic problems of those who do not have enough food or clean drinking water. Are the concerns of astronomers and their researchers really worth more than the ability to stream blockbuster movies for upper and middle classes? Which I thought was, that's just the argument right there. So yeah, and this last idea is that, SpaceX is a company, and one of the primary ways that companies make money is working with the military. And regardless of how you feel about the military, like if they're pitching themselves as a purely humanitarian mission, we just want to help explore Mars, and we just want to give everybody not free internet, reasonably priced internet, you need to examine those motivations more closely. So yeah, that's all I've got. Questions? It says links in the description. It doesn't have that right now. I'll put those in later. I was busy. But yeah, that's it.
Great talk, Dark Matter Dude. We do have a few questions from the chat. So to start, this question comes from Cosmic Strings in the chat. How do you keep all the things in orbit from crashing into each other or damaging spacecraft leaving Earth?
That is a great question and another big concern that I didn't really have time to talk about. So to answer the question, certainly within your system, you can talk to each other and make sure that you don't have a Starlink satellite crash into another Starlink satellite. That's easy. Past that, there's actually, this is an area of active research. How many, how do you make sure that all these satellites, once you crank up the number of them, that they communicate with each other fast enough to not collide with each other? So people are working on that. It involves artificial intelligence and a whole bunch of other buzzwords. But another concern here is if you have enough stuff orbiting around Earth and something collides with something else, the idea is basically that it could start a chain reaction that everything breaks apart. And when you have billions and billions of tiny pieces, everything flying around at orbital speeds, you literally can't launch anything from Earth anymore. So that would immediately stop all space exploration, period, which would be bad. That's all I've got.
That actually leads up well into a follow-up question from Curtis Hunt. Can we shoot down the satellites? I think specifically they're talking about the Starlink satellites, but in general, how do we take care of space junk? Are there plans for taking care of all this space junk, like you said, that's going to be flying around?
Right. So the honest answer is no. Shooting them down, you end up in the same problem, right? Like this is what is. It's hard to remind people of this, but like if there's an Armageddon asteroid heading straight for Earth, and we shoot it into we shoot a missile at it or a nuke or whatever, and it breaks off into 2 asteroids. Well, now we have 2 asteroids flying at Earth. You didn't really change the problem, and so you get kind of into that same idea. Now there are kinds of ideas that people are kind of exploring, anything from basically shooting a kind of net, possibly electromagnetic net, at the stuff to kind of capture the debris. So that's kind of an idea. Lasers to basically just kind of redirect the orbit away from Earth is another thing. Yeah, but all that's premised on, not triggering this chain where then we can't have any exploration at all.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. I don't think we have any other questions in the chat, and I don't have any other questions. So thank you so much, Dark Matter Dude. Wonderful, wonderful talk. All right. So MC, what do we have next up in the docket?
Well, next up on the docket, Mr. the Cosmic Kid, is you, the Cosmic Kid, talking to us about what's up in the sky.
Oh my.
Yeah, so take us away.
All right, folks, what's up? Welcome to the October 2020 edition of What's Up, where I tell you what's up in the sky and what's fun to look at. So first of all, we've got Mars. It's going to hit its closest approach to Earth until 2035 earlier this month. Which means that if you look out right now, it's going to be super, super bright. You can see the large features in it, even with small telescopes, or if you have larger telescopes, you can see more features. Some of the features you might look out for if you have access to these things are the Terra, which are dark regions on Mars caused by volcanic outflows from millions and millions of years ago. If you have a larger telescope, you might be able to see Phobos and Deimos, which are the two moons of Mars. So that's a fun target to look at. It's also currently the brightest object in the night sky other than the moon, so it should be pretty obvious when you try to go look for it, even with the naked eye. Next up, we got a bunch of meteors. So the Orionid meteor showers, one of the most famous meteor showers, are gonna hit their peak tonight. So the meteors are actually chunks from Halley's Comet, one of the most famous comets. And as Halley's Comet sort of passes by close to the Earth, not close enough, unfortunately, for us to look at, but some of the chunks coming off of it are going to go into Earth's atmosphere and create meteors. The best time to look for these is going to be between midnight and 5 a.m. tonight. So make sure you stay up a little bit longer. But then again, who isn't up at midnight these days? And try to look in the direction of Orion, which is one of the brightest and easiest to spot constellations in the night sky, at least if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. And it might take you a while, you might not see a lot, but hopefully if you look around this time, you might see a handful of meteors, which is always a really, really fun sight. Next up, we've got Uranus, which will reach opposition, which is the closest approach of the year, at the end of this month. This also means that it's visible with binoculars or a telescope, as long as you know where to look, because you're not going to be able to see it with your naked eye. You're going to look up in the southeast right around midnight. It's going to be somewhat in the area of Mars, so if you can spot Mars, you're at least in the right neighborhood. And then, of course, in the image here, I have the exact location, so if you can identify some of the bright stars, you can sort of figure out exactly where Uranus is and have a good look at Uranus. And that, my friends, is what's up.
Great job. Thank you, Cosmic Kid. Next up on the docket today, I believe we have Dark Matter Dude back again with In the News, Astronomy in the News. Dark Matter Dude and Karina.
Hello.
Karina
wants to say hi.
Hi, Karina. Maybe.
Okay. Great. All right, so we're gonna do some In the News. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but I changed my shirt. It's the joke is kind of mitigated with the cat kind of blocking all the screen. There we go. Now she moves. Yeah. So here we go. We're gonna talk about the news, everything that happened in October 2020. All of it from your couch. It's gonna be great. Cool. So first big thing, there was a Nobel Prize in Physics announcement, and it was in astronomy. So we get to talk about it here. So the prize was between three people. Half the prize went to Sir Roger Penrose. Penrose was a mathematician and a physicist who basically did a whole bunch. I'm not going to explain this well. A, I'm tipsy. B, it confuses me. But basically, Roger Penrose did a whole bunch of math to prove that black holes are a natural consequence from Einstein's theory of general relativity. So he's the one who kind of really solidify that theoretical framework to basically argue, yeah, black holes should totally be there. and then so the second half of the prize is split between two people. So we've got a quarter, math, between Reinhard Genzel and Andrea Ghez. So both of these two scientists led different teams, one American, one European, that studied in exquisite detail orbits of stars at the center of our at the very center of our Milky Way. And so I have a GIF of that playing in the corner. Basically, if you look at the orbits of these stars, you can kind of see how they're all orbiting something that isn't there. It isn't apparent in optical light, and it's a black hole. Spoiler alert! It's the supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way. And so these orbits really gave us a constraints on something is there. It's probably a black hole. Great. So they got the other parts of the prize. And I'm also just gonna like toot my horn a little bit here. So astronomy. So there's only a Nobel Prize in physics, right? Astronomy is just a little subfield of that. Astronomers have gotten 3 of the last 4 Nobel Prizes in physics, and if you expand that to 10 years, it's 5 of the last 10. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just rename it the Nobel Prize in Astrophysics, just because, you know, all we do is win. Right. Okay. Okay. Water under Mars. Liquid water under Mars. Super exciting. There's some evidence of this. Okay. So 2018, there was a study that basically claimed that there's a large lake near the Martian South Pole. Shown beautifully in that image there. So astronomers have since gotten new data that's more convincing. Basically, they use the same kind of methodology that we have used on Earth to kind of study the topology of the North Arctic. So using that data, we have more convincing evidence that this large lake near the Martian South Pole is true. And they also found 3 new lakes. Great. So basically the idea is that you have an orbiting spacecraft that sends radar pulses down and then gives those get bounced back up off the ground. And they penetrate a couple of some substantial amount deep. And so you can use that to basically just map the surface and what's underneath the surface. People use this on Earth to figure out where underground lakes are, where oil is. Yeah. So all in all, this is fantastic news. It's probably really cold, so likely less than -100 degrees Celsius. But you can make that happen if the water is super salty, basically. So the reason that they think that this water may not be frozen is that you basically perchlorates a type of salt that comes from the rock just in the lake. So that's cool. Tiny star, giant planet, right? So we have found the first intact planet orbiting a white dwarf star. So the planet is about Jupiter size, but because the star is a white dwarf, that's very small. It's about 1.5 Earth radii, and so the planet is about 7 times the star. And so, and that's just like, that never happened. That's a totally like insane ratio to have your planet be not just larger than the star, but like several times larger than the star. As a result, when the planet crosses in front of the star, and we see a dip in how much light we're getting from the star, you actually get a dip of about 56%. So it's blocking a ton of light. Like normal exoplanet transits are like 1%, about thereabouts. So yeah, so this is fantastic. Just fascinating. Using infrared telescopes. So this is before Spitzer was taken offline. So Rip Spitzer. Using infrared studies, astronomers also found that the star had been a white dwarf for about 6 billion years. Because basically, when white dwarfs actually enter their final stage, they're no longer generating any more energy. It's basically just heat dissipation. So if you measure the temperature of the white dwarf, and we know more or less what temperature to start off as, it just cools, by a pretty straightforward physics. So that's cool. That's cool. Basically, that we were able to get a nice age on this thing. Astronomers also were able to watch a star get spaghettified. I didn't put this in here, but this is also the first time that spaghettified appeared in the New York Times. Fun fact. Anywho, so this is what's called a tidal disruption event. Basically, when you take a star and bring it close enough to a black hole, the close part of the star experiences substantially more gravity than the far away point of the star. And then it gets pulled apart, stretched apart, and you get spaghettification. So this happened in 2019, but the cool thing is that it's the closest that we've seen in optical light ever. So that's really cool. I already explained how these things happen. At its peak, this event was blasting out 10 billion times what you get from the sun. Basically, having a star just get ripped apart it just releases an extraordinary amount of energy. And so we were able to see this 250 million light years away. It was just like a super bright thing happening on top of a galaxy. So that's really cool. All right, so this is my last thing. I'd like to end on a fun note that isn't too sciencey. So astronomers took Hubble Space Telescope images of a supernova, evolved over time. And basically, this is just a video that stacks those together, and so you can actually watch a supernova dim over time. It's gonna play one more time. This dimming happens over the course of several weeks to about a month, and so you get this dimming. This is just real. This is a real HST image, and this is the supernova evolving with that time, and that was just really cool. I just thought that was neat. But yes, that was what was in the news.
Great job, Dark Matter Dude. We actually do have a question in chat for the news, and that is for the planet, the large planet orbiting the dwarf star. What is the mass ratio between that planet and the dwarf, and is it such that the dwarf is actually orbiting the planet?
I can't tell you the mass ratio, but I am like 98% sure that the star is still way more massive. Yeah. Okay. Yes, my basic astronomy didn't film me there. So white dwarfs are small. Basically, if you take the sun, fuse most of the fuel that it has, I really hope that there aren't any professors watching this, because this is about to be a really bad explanation. Basically, once it fuses most of its fuel, it will basically just blow off all of the extra layers that aren't the central really dense core. But that central really dense core still remains, and that's where most of the mass is. And so all you really do when you take a white dwarf progenitor and make it a white dwarf is just blow off all that extra material. You make the star smaller, but it doesn't really lose that much mass. So that's the gist. So yeah, the planet's still definitely orbiting the star.
Yeah, it's bigger in radius, but not bigger in mass, probably.
Yeah, probably. All right, thank you so much, Dark Matter Dude. Thanks for the talk, and thanks for in the news, pulling double duty tonight. So what do we have next up?
Next up, we have Jacqueline Antwi-Danso, who will be giving us a talk on the almost 20th anniversary now of the ISS being crewed, the International Space Station being crewed.
Yeah, welcome, Jacqueline Antwi-Danso, aka Ghana Gal.
Ghana Gal.
How's it going?
Hi, thank you both. It's going well.
Going well, yeah. So fun fact about Ghana Gal, you're a huge fan of the Marvel films.
Yes, I am.
You're not a huge fan of the Fast and Furious movies, even though you have not gone through on my suggestion of marathoning all 9 movies with me.
You know what? I got to 6 and I was done. Okay.
All right, fair enough. But hey, offer still on the table if you ever want to marathon all 9 of the movies with me. Hey, apparently they're going to end after the 11th movie, which is technically the 12th movie. But you know, whatever. We'll ignore the side movies.
12 is too many.
I mean, there's 23 Marvel movies, but sure, 12 more Fast and Furious movies are too many. Anyway.
23 reasons why each of them is important, okay?
Sure, okay. We'll settle this for later. So give it up for Ghana Gal, everyone.
All right, so let's share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the ISS, which has been continuously occupied by humans since November 2nd, 2000. When I was preparing this talk, I realized just how old I am because this 20 years feels like a long time, but then it also doesn't feel like a long time because 2000 doesn't feel like that long ago. But this is a really great feat, first of all, because getting humans to space in the 60s took a lot of concerted effort from many different people, many different groups. And to maintain that continuous human presence in space took even more effort. And so this is really something worth celebrating. And there are a number of NASA activities that are going on right now to celebrate this. And so I'll be going through some of those if you're interested. Basic timeline for the talk is I'll be going through what the ISS is, some of the activities that take place on the ISS, such as the research, the science, some of the things that the astronauts do while they're up there. And then I'll also be talking about some of the history of the ISS, so how we even got to this point in the first place. All right. So the ISS is a modular space station, which just means that each part of the space station was independently assembled, independently created, and then put together. And I'll talk later about why that's important. And it's in low Earth orbit. So it's the largest artificial object in space and the largest satellite in low Earth orbit. It's visible to the naked eye. And I'll be talking later about how you can find it by yourself. You don't need a telescope. And it's a multinational collaboration between the space agencies of the USA, Russia, Japan, Europe, Canada, and the countries in Europe that are involved here are Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Norway, the UK, Netherlands, Sweden, and Switzerland. So as you can see here, this is the logo of the ISS. It's a really huge international collaborative effort, and it took many years just to get it assembled, many years to perform all of the spacewalks, all of the maintenance, all of the research and science I'll be talking about later. It's a huge collaborative effort. So let's talk about what it means to be in low Earth orbit. Here I'm showing a picture of the Earth and some satellites that are in low Earth orbit. The International Space Station sits right here at just about 211 miles or 340 kilometers if you speak metric units like me. So it's located right between Sputnik 1 and the Hubble Space Telescope. And that distance that it sits above the surface of the Earth is about the distance from New York to Washington, DC, just to give you a sense of scale. So let's talk about some fun facts about the ISS. It weighs about 1 million pounds, which is really heavy, and just happens to be about the weight of the Airbus A380. It's also about the size longitudinally of the Airbus A380, and it orbits the Earth once every 93 minutes, or there are 15 orbits per day for the ISS. Fun fact, this also happens to be the number of times the average person checks their email every day. So every time you check your email, just remember, oh, you might see the ISS passing over at this time of the day as well. So this is another schematic just depicting the ISS once again. You can see the full structure of the ISS as we saw before with the solar panels right here. So these are the numbers that we showed before. The mass is about 1 million pounds. These solar panels here are actually double-sided, which was one of the really interesting things about the ISS. So most solar panels here on Earth are single-sided, but then to make energy generation and usage more efficient on the ISS, they made the solar panels double-sided. So one side of the solar panels face the sun, and then the other side collects reflected light from the Earth. And again, just to make things energy use and collection more efficient on the ISS. And you can see here, the space station is quite large. Just to give you just a sense of scale again, it's just 1 yard shy of an American football field, including the end zone. So this is just a really huge satellite sitting in space. And it moves at a speed of 17,500 miles per hour or 28,000 kilometers per hour, which if you move at this speed, you could do a single round trip to the moon at this speed, which is just mind-blowing. So again, it's just a really remarkable station that we have in space. Just some more fun facts about the ISS. So most spacecraft can arrive there anywhere between 6 hours and 5 days after launch. And that timeline just depends on a number of things, the purpose of the spacecraft and what it's carrying, all of that, how many docking stations are available, et cetera, et cetera. But again, most things on the ISS have just been configured for efficiency. So 6 hours to 5 days is quite efficient. The orbital path of the space station takes it over 90% of the Earth's population. So if you've seen any of those gorgeous pictures taken by astronauts from different portions of the Earth, this is why. It's because it's able to cover such a large swath of the surface area of the Earth. So if you've seen any pictures like this is why. These beautiful pictures just showing different portions of the Earth. This is the Earth captured at nighttime, and you can see it looks beautiful because of the light here, but this is terrible for astronomers because light pollution. But additionally, 8 spaceships can be connected to the space station at a single time. So again, most things on the ISS are configured for efficiency and to be able to accept different payloads at different times, some of them carrying research equipment, some of them carrying various things. This is a must. And so it's been designed so that 8 different spaceships can be connected to the space station at the same time, which is pretty remarkable. The other thing that I found really interesting about the ISS is that over 240 individuals from 19 different countries have visited the International Space Station. Most of these people are actual astronauts, and a few of them, I believe 6 or so people, are actually space tourists. Unfortunately, I believe only the Russian section is currently accepting space tourists, and for a cool $35,000, you can be a space tourist and visit the International Space Station. But yeah, that just speaks to the truly international nature of the ISS. Again, most of these people are from the US, so 151 people, and most of them from Russia as well, and then a small number from some European countries and others. All right. So how do astronauts actually live, work, do things on the ISS? So the conditions in space are just not conducive to human life, living activities. And so a lot of adjustments have to be made to be able to function well in space. And so astronauts, for instance, have to work out for between 2 to 3 hours a day. And when I saw this, I was like, well, that just disqualifies me because I do 30 minutes at most a day. But that just shows you just how extreme the conditions in space can be and the extreme effects that they can have on the human body, for instance. And again, talking about the efficiency of the space station, 4 different cargo spacecraft deliver the science, the cargo, the supplies, including Northrop Grumman's Cygnus, SpaceX's Dragon, the Japan Space Agency's HTV, and Russia's Progress cargo spacecraft. So again, all of this just makes it easier for regular resupplies, so that, for instance, if we need to redo an experiment, it's not, efficiency is always key. So another interesting thing about the ISS is that it has a really, really efficient water recycling system. So, and this is all done in a closed loop system. And it's necessary because, I mean, obviously you're in space, so you can't be, you have to be really efficient with your water. And so, I mean, the same water that you includes your urine, sweat, all of that is recycled. And although that sounds utterly disgusting, the water, because it's purified, it's actually cleaner than a lot of the water that we Earthlings drink. So that's just another fun fact about the ISS. So let's talk now about the ISS timeline, how it came to be. First, what we see today, or what has come to be the ISS that we know today. So it took 10 years and more than 30 missions to assemble, which is a really, really long time. And it wouldn't have been possible without a lot of training, which actually started in the 1960s spacewalks and space programs to train astronauts to adjust to some of the conditions, figure out how to design the spacesuits for such travel and stays in space. The idea of a space station was initially just one science fiction. And so it's really, really remarkable that a couple decades later, it's just an everyday thing and people know, oh, this is just a thing that exists. So to begin, in January 1984, President Ronald Reagan directed NASA to build the ISS. And then in November 20th of 1998, the first segment of the ISS was launched. It's a Russian proton rocket named Zarya, which means sunrise. Next, the first US-built component called Unity was launched. It took 3 EVAs, or extravehicular assemblies, or spacewalks for short, to do this, totaling 21 hours and 22 minutes. And then the first crew to reside on the space station went in November 2nd, 2000. And ever since then, we have had continuous human presence on the International Space Station. Next, we added the Destiny module in February 7th of 2001. And Destiny is the primary research lab for US payloads. The Canada arm was assembled around the same time, and this was the longest single spacewalk. It took 8 hours and 55 minutes. Next, in 2007, Harmony, also known as Node 2, was connected to the ISS. It's the utility hub of the ISS and connects the lab modules of the US, Europe, and Japan, and provides electrical power and electronic data. It also has some sleeping cabins for some crew members. Next, the Tranquility node, or the third node, was connected. It took 3 spacewalks, totaling 18 hours and 14 minutes. The Tranquility node contains environmental control systems, life support systems, a toilet, exercise equipment, and an observation cupola. The cupola is where a lot of these pictures are taken, and also where a lot of the astronauts go to just relax after a long day. And then in 2011, the ISS assembly was complete. And then very recently, last year, we had the first ever all-female spacewalk to assemble a battery unit, which was responsible for charging the solar panels, which had failed. These 2 women, Christina Koch and her partner here, went to fix that battery and made history as being part of the first ever all-female spacewalk. And looking ahead, NASA is testing out the Exploration Extravehicular Mobility Units, or the XEMU spacesuits, basically new spacesuits that are supposed to be improvements on the original AMU unveiled for which has been in use all these years. And the plan is to test this on the ISS in 2023, and this will possibly be used for some of the longer term space programs, like the space mission to Mars. So let's talk about the science on the ISS. For all intents and purposes, the ISS has really become or has evolved to be a national lab. And because of that, all kinds of science benefiting mankind occur on the International Space Station, and they span a wide range of areas, including biology, biotech, earth science, physical science, chemistry, physics, biology, outreach activities for school children from K through 12. So a lot of things are happening on the ISS. A lot of this work is actually published in really reputable journals. So this diagram here is just showing what that distribution looks like. So most of the work, the funding and the expertise goes into bio and biotech and human research, not surprisingly, because one of NASA's main focuses is to study what, if long-term human space flight is possible. The physical sciences, earth and space sciences, physics and astronomy, and a small fraction goes to educational activities. So just some science highlights. This was one of the really groundbreaking studies to come out of the ISS, known as the twin study. As I mentioned earlier, spaceflight is really, really harsh on the human body. As of 2006, we knew that astronauts suffer significant muscular atrophy, and there's a possibility that their bones would even fracture on a long-term space flight. But this was really the first study to determine what the effect would be on an even longer space flight, such as the one to Mars, which takes between 6 to 8 months. So this diagram here, this picture here is showing astronaut Scott Kelly on the left and his brother, who's now retired, Mark Kelly, on the right. Scott was in space for a whole year, and his twin brother was on Earth. And so what they did was, because they are twins and so they have a similar genetic makeup, they studied how Scott's genes or his gene expression changed while he was in space, and how that compared to that of his brother who was still on Earth. And this was such a huge study. It brought together 10 different research teams from all over the country, and they did a really exhaustive study covering different parts of different key things that would be important to examine for long-term space flight, such as what does his microbiome look like? What does his gut health look like? How does his cognition change while he's in space? How does he respond to vaccines while he's in space? How does his body mass change or not change while he's in space? Different things like that. And they found a lot of really interesting things. For instance, that telomeres, which are structures that protect the ends of our DNA, for Scott's telomeres actually lengthened in space, even though on Earth, usually as we age, our telomeres get shorter, which was a really interesting finding, hadn't been seen before. There were a number of other things about Scott's body which changed significantly, which made them realize, okay, these are the things that we need to actually take into consideration if we're ever going to send a human to space or on an even longer space flight. So this is actually one of the more popular studies to come out of the ISS. Another interesting study or set of studies that's been going on in the ISS is crystal growth towards Parkinson's research and cancer research. So for those of you who may not know, Parkinson's disease is a degenerative nerve disorder that causes dopamine levels in the brain to drop, which could affect your cognition. It could affect your balance. It could cause tremors, stiffness, etc., etc. And so many astronauts have conducted over 500 protein experiments in this microgravity environment just to try and understand how certain proteins that are produced by people who have these conditions, how we can better grow these proteins, grow them faster, grow them in more quantity so that we can study them and try to provide better treatments for Parkinson's, cancer, and other diseases. Another interesting type of study that's happening on the ISS is studying planet formation. So in particular, studying these things called chondrules, which are these tiny sphere-like particles that we find in meteorites. And they are thought to be the building blocks of what eventually formed the rocks that became the planets and the meteors and meteorites and rocky objects in the solar system. Until now, we don't really have a good idea of how exactly they formed. People have theorized that if you activate these chondrules with lightning-like energy, you can form these rocky structures that we see, but nobody had tested it before. And so astronauts on the ISS placed silica dust in this gaseous chamber that you see here on the left, and then zapped that silica dust with some lightning-like energy just to see if any chondrules would be formed. And they had some preliminary results showing that, yes, it is possible to do something like this in space. And so based on the research on the ISS, we're learning things about planet formation, for instance, and different science like this. So really, really interesting science going on the ISS. On the outreach side, there's this Sally Ride Earth Camp program where students in various institutions around the world can send requests to take pictures of different parts of the world. So it's called the Sally Ride program because Sally Ride, who's an astronaut, installed a camera on the ISS specifically for this outreach program. And so they've taken these gorgeous pictures. If you just Google the Sally Ride Earth Camp program, you will find these beautiful, beautiful pictures taken of various places around the world. This is Northwestern Australia. This is in Mexico. And these students are just studying all kinds of things like deforestation in various forests around the world. And it's some really, really cool outreach work going on. So you can check that out as well if you're interested. So that's in a nutshell some of the work that's going on the ISS. There are many, many more experiments, science, research, all kinds of things are happening every single day on the ISS. And so if you're interested in knowing all that is going on, or interested in following the NASA activities planned for the 20th celebration, you can go to nasa.gov/station20 to follow those activities, which is in exactly 11 days from now. And the other thing that you can check out is there's a podcast called Houston, We Have a Podcast. So you can check that out as well, where I believe for each day, prior to the anniversary, we'll be talking about, for instance, the history of the ISS, how it came to be, more about the science and the research. So you can check that out if you're interested. If you have kids, they also have activities for kids. So there are a number of resources like activity workbooks, coloring books, videos from the astronauts themselves, from the researchers who are conducting these experiments both on the ISS and on Earth. And there's a theme for every month. So August through, I believe, August of this year through August of next year, there's a theme for every month, spanning everything really: human research, mathematics, physics, medical breakthroughs, all of that. So if you have kids, or if you know kids who'll be interested in this, you can check this out and then follow NASA as well on their social media accounts. Also, the ISS is visible. So like I mentioned, it orbits the Earth once every 15 times per day. So if you Google spotthestation.nasa.gov, you will come across this live tracking app, which you can use to see where the ISS is, and then see if you can find it. So it's visible with your naked eye. You don't need a telescope to find it. It'll appear like a really bright star moving quickly across the sky. So It'll look like an airplane, or it could look like an airplane as well, but it will be moving faster than an airplane does. So you'll be able to locate it that way. So this is just what that app looks like. And the tracks here show, I believe, the ISS 1.5 hours, the orbit's 1.5 hours before and 1.5 hours after. And the dark areas here are places that are have night, and then those that are in the daytime. So you can just check the app out if you're interested and try to spot the ISS with your naked eye. And that is all. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ghana Gal. Great talk, great overview. We got a couple of questions in the chat. So first of all, from Serious Stargazer, what is your favorite MCU movie? The most important question, I believe.
Oh, this is a hard question because I like so many of them. I'd probably say, so I can mention my three favorite ones: Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Excellent choices.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah.
We got another question from Cosmic Strings in the chat. Can we see the ISS with binoculars in Texas?
You should be able to. Depends on which part of Texas you're in though, but yes, short answer to that is yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you can see the ISS, I believe, from basically anywhere on Earth, even if you're in the middle of a major city. I mean, I am the what's up person, so I guess I should know this. Yeah. But I have seen the ISS from major cities before with the naked eye. I mean, with the naked eye, it just looks like a bright dot flashing through the sky. But with binoculars or small telescope, you can see it a little bit easier. The tricky part is that the ISS is moving incredibly fast, as you showed in your talk. And so training it on with binoculars or a small telescope is going to be difficult because it'll move out of frame extremely quickly.
Yeah.
We have another question from Serious Stargazer saying, I didn't know so many spaceships could dock at the ISS at once. Are there enough spaceships on Earth right now for that to happen? Like for all 8 docking ports to be used, I guess.
My knee-jerk response is yes, maybe, but then I'd have to check.
Yeah, I think so, because I think there's at least a few refueling or like things that can bring up supplies separately from crewed, like ships that bring up crew. And so my guess is also yes. I think. Next question from Cosmic Strings. How fast would a circular space station like the one in 2000 A Space Odyssey need to be going to simulate the gravity of Earth?
So I haven't seen 2000 Space Odyssey. I don't know. Send me the speed of the thing and let me do the math.
Right. Like I think that one too is like you would need the centripetal acceleration to match Earth's gravity, right? And so the Earth's gravity acceleration is 9.8 meters per second squared, and so it would depend on like where you're standing relative to the center point of rotation, I think.
Right. It depends on the radius of the station.
Yeah, fast enough that it's 9.8 meters, fast enough that it's the acceleration of Earth's gravity.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next question we have from Jessica, which I believe was answered in the chat. So I think we can skip that one actually. So the next is from Soul Reaper, which is what's the difference between doing these experiments on space versus the Earth? So what is the advantage basically of doing experiments in the International Space Station?
Yeah, so I believe the main advantage is the presence of microgravity. So on Earth, you are bound by gravity. So you can't do certain things like in the slide where I showed the silica dust suspending in the gas chamber, for instance, you wouldn't be able to do that on Earth because you can't simulate microgravity easily, at least here on Earth. So that's the main advantage, having these microgravity environments where you can accurately determine how certain objects behave or react to certain things in space, as opposed to here on Earth, where you just don't have that environment.
And I believe that's all the questions we have. So thank you so much, Ganagal. Excellent talk.
Thank you.
So what's next, MC?
All right, so next up, we're going to go through trivia answers, and then we're going to go through announcements one more time, and then that's it. But first, let me share my screen, and we can share those trivia answers with you. So as you all may or may not have noticed, those of you who did the trivia, it was in fact International Space Station Special Edition trivia. And our first question was, as of October 2020, individuals from how many different countries have visited the International Space Station, or ISS? And the answer was 19. Here's the flags for all of them. This was, I think a lot of these questions ended up getting covered in Jacqueline's talk. So if you delayed this long enough to do the trivia, you might have had a slight advantage.
Question number 2, the ISS is a collaboration between how many different space agencies? 5 different space agencies. What are the different space agencies, MC?
They are NASA, which is the United States Space Agency. There's Roscosmos, which is Russia's. JAXA, which is Japan's, the European Space Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency.
Thank you for answering, because I didn't know what half of these acronyms were.
Yeah, you're good. True or false, the ISS is visible by eye from the Earth's surface. Just talked about this one. It is, in fact, true. This is, of course, a photograph of it. So, this isn't technically by eye because it's a photograph. But the point is it's bright. You can see it by eye pretty much anywhere.
Question number 4, how long does it take for the ISS to orbit the Earth? About 93 minutes. So it's a very, very fast space station.
Yeah. All right. Who has spent the most total time living and working in space? And the answer to this one is Gennady Padalka left. And so he's a cosmonaut from Russia who spent almost 900 days in space. That's 878 and a half days in space that he has spent in total. The American astronaut who has spent the longest amount of time in space is actually Peggy Whitson, who spent almost 666 days.
Wow. How many spaceships can be connected to the ISS at once? 8 spacecraft, which is insane considering that currently only, I believe, SpaceX and the Russian Cosmos is the only people who are able to send spacecraft up to the ISS.
Question number 7. What is the official name of or not official, but the more common name for the Space Station Remote Manipulator System SSRMS, which is a robotic arm on the ISS used for moving modules, experiments, and spacewalking astronauts around the station? I would love it to be Armbot Express Jr., but it is in fact Canadarm, and it is called Canadarm because it is manufactured by Canada, or well, a Canadian company, the MDA company.
Which of the below objects is approximately the same length as the International Space Station? That's right, it's the American football field, including the end zones. The tennis court is much smaller, and ice hockey rink is also much smaller. State of Rhode Island is only slightly larger than the ISS.
Just slightly.
Just slightly.
All right, question number 9. In what year did assembly of the ISS in orbit begin? And it's 1998. So, right, Jacqueline talked about how Zarya was launched, the first module launched in November 1998, and it rendezvoused shortly after with Unity in December 1998.
The ISS has been continuously occupied since November 2nd of 2000 with Expedition 1.
Yeah, and so shown here on the right as well, we have the most recent crew changeover, where we're currently on Expedition 63. Expedition 64 is coming up. And that is it for trivia. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen and switch over to sharing the announcements one more time. We'll run through those.
And we'll be in touch with the trivia winners as soon as we can. And we'll send you all your special trivia prizes.
All right, here we go. All right, so yes, we have done the trivia. Trivia winners will be emailed. Please make sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. It really helps us out a lot.
And make sure to follow us on social media at AoT_BCS on Twitter and AoT BCS on Facebook and Instagram. And follow us on our website at astronomyontop.org/events.
You can also help support the Grand Stafford, which is our usual in-person venue. If you Venmo Jose Quintana 20 at, if you send a tip there, that's how you can tip your bartender for tonight. And if you put Stafford Tip there, they'll know what it's for.
And help support us and donate at us at AoT BCS on the Cash App or Venmo. And if you give us $15, we might send you an AoT t-shirt, depending on size availability.
And we're gonna order more t-shirts too, since we are running out of sizes, I think.
And these are what the t-shirts look like, by the way, if you're interested.
Yeah, they look great. Our next event is November 18th, 2020. So that's the third Wednesday of next month. And we don't have any more questions, I think, because this is the end of the show. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you all so much for joining us. It was a great show. Thanks again to all our speakers who made some really, really great and interesting talks. So thank you for that. And I hope you'll have a stellar night.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.